All right. First rule of this channel, we not talk about this channel. Second rule of this channel, this is not legal advice. So this is going to be the 2024 fantasy football offseason preview for the Detroit Lions. And stuff like this is like what's fun for me is to break down teams like statistically and find the holes in ADPs because again, I tend to look at it and think I'm not drafting last year's production. I'm drafting this year's ranges of outcomes. I don't want to be paying for guys' ceilings. And on good offenses, like unfortunately, you're going to have to pay the price to get a hold of teams that are going to score a lot of points are going to have a lot of yards. That's what the Lions are going to do. Um, but the idea in the past was it was all about like pure opportunity, and that's not the case. It's about efficiency. But where does efficiency come from? It comes from having the right opportunity. So teams that score a lot of points, they tend to be in the red zone a lot of the time. If the teams that are scoring a lot of points are giving more opportunities to certain guys, those guys are going to be more valuable because of pure opportunity. It just happens to be the right opportunity. That's what's going on with Kamara. Just like running backs that get designed passing work tend to be more valuable than guys that get a lot of passing work because they're check down monsters. That's just how it goes. Again, like I want pieces of good offenses. I generally want pieces of good offenses at lower price. It's the same thing. I want pieces of bad offenses. I want pieces of bad offenses at lower prices than I would even pay for like okay pieces of good offenses. It's the price that becomes the problem. Don't hate the player, hate the ADP. And that's what we're going to look at with the Lions. I'm not saying any of these players are bad. I'm saying that I think some of these guys are overvalued. And trying to win a fantasy football championship, again, the same process. So win me a league, will lose me a league. The idea is I have to be able to take risk. If I want to come in third place, I'll just punt. And someone who hits on their picks, whether they did it on purpose or on accident, will win the league. The guy that finds the legendary outcome player will win their league. And whether that's like Cooper Kupp going in the 5th round of the draft, or that's Travis Kelce going in the 1st round of the draft, those guys have a disproportionate advantage when it comes to winning the fantasy championship. That's what we're looking at. So when I talk about certain guys being like overvalued, it doesn't mean that like I think they're going to have bad seasons. It just means like, hey, their risk is probably not being appropriately factored into the cost that I have to pay for them. So the higher guys go up in the fantasy football draft there where their ADP is, like they should have either relatively no risk or they're being drafted at the mid range of their outcomes, meaning that they still have upside built into them. And we're going to talk about that with Jahmyr Gibbs here in a second in general. So I got to bounce around a lot when it comes to talking about the Lions today, and hopefully I won't screw this up. I didn't like how some of the other takes were going. So in general, I can bring this up real quick. The Lions were 2nd in passing yards, 5th in rushing yards, and they were 5th in points for. So when we look at the teams last year that I generally would like to get pieces of, the Dolphins, the 49ers, the Lions, the Bills, the Cowboys, Ravens, maybe the Rams, maybe the Eagles, probably the Chiefs, the Packers definitely this year. We're talking about some of the other teams like the Texans. There are teams that are out there. Scoring is down. Overall yards are down. There's only going to be much we can get out of some of these teams. So yes, teams like the Detroit Lions, like we're expecting last year's production. There's probably not going to be a lot that we can get going forward out of this team without some of the production going from one player to another player. And that risk, if a guy is being drafted at the edge of their range of outcomes, i.e., their ceiling, becomes like it's something that I don't want to be taking on. Like you can take on whoever you want, but when I realize like in order for Sam LaPorta to take a step forward, it may be at the Sun God's production. For Jahmyr Gibbs to take a step forward, it may be at like Sam LaPorta's legendary unicorn type season. Like those are the things that are going on. So when I pull up, I want to bring up the passing in general for the Lions last year. Like Jared Goff, he was 2nd when it came to overall passing yards. Maybe not going to be the year that I would be betting that we're going to have like a 5,000 yard passer with like 40 or 50 passing touchdowns. So we're definitely looking at like the over under on Jared Goff. And I would, punt on this one, being that he's going to be around 4,500 yards passing and 30 touchdowns. Like maybe I get 40 and 5,000 yards. Sure. Maybe I get 4,000 yards and like 20 touchdowns because some teams that we think are going to be bad are going to be good. That's just how it goes. So expecting that he's going to have like this outlier season when it comes to like Tua, Dak, Josh Allen, Brock Purdy, Patrick Mahomes, expecting that we can properly guess the guy that's going to take that step forward is a little bit difficult. The reason why when we talk about Jared Goff in particular, it makes it really difficult is the Lions, being 5th in rushing yards. So last year with their 500 rush attempts to go along with like 135 yards per game, 2,300 yards rushing, behind teams that didn't throw a lot like the Baltimore Ravens or the Chicago Bears, the very efficient San Francisco 49ers, right? Like when we look at this and we go like, oh, well, how do we get more blood out of the Detroit Lions? If we take away some of the rushing work and we give it to Jared Goff, then the running backs have to have their ADP reflect the fact that there's a possibility in order for the passing game to do better, the rushing game is going to do worse, or vice versa. We get more out of Jahmyr Gibbs and we get more out of David Montgomery. Well, we're going to have a Brock Purdy type of season for Jared Goff, which means maybe there's less passing yards, maybe there's less passing touchdowns, even though the Lions offense is statistically going to be better in other regards. So this is something to be paying attention to when we try and break all this stuff down. So I'm also going to talk about like the vacated opportunities when it comes to Josh Reynolds leaving and going to the Broncos. Again, vacated opportunities tend to go to running backs, then tight ends, and then apples to apples to wide receivers. But we also have Jameson Williams coming back, like first full year in the league after injuries and suspensions. So trying to figure out like where I would be guessing the ranges of outcomes versus for the players relative to their ADP. This is where it gets fun. Like, is this guy overvalued? Is this guy undervalued? I'm not drafting production. I'm saying, well, some of these guys are going to have the ability to win leagues. They also are going to have the ability to tank your opportunity to win your championship to even make playoffs if we're wrong about the distribution. Some of it is going to be more or less predictive. Other of it's going to not be predictive. Jameson Williams having a high efficiency season because he's able to produce on limited touches is probably going to hurt other guys. And we can maybe guess on how much of that's going to happen, but some of it is just going to be, for lack of a better way to put it, like luck, because some of those guys are going to be special and they're going to be able to take a 5-yard hitch to the house, for 80 yards. So just bear all this in mind. So starting off with the quarterback position, Jared Goff, he's my quarterback 18 overall. Again, good offense, high volume passing offense, a lot of opportunity to score touchdowns, no rushing upside. That's why he's at quarterback 18. This is not even a punt. This is going to be the equivalent of trying to win your league by taking a safety in the end zone at the end, right? There are going to be guys in leagues that are going after rushing upside quarterbacks that miss, but there are also going to be guys in leagues that are going up there after rushing upside quarterbacks that hit. Jared Goff's not going to be that guy. So you're going to have this very limited opportunity to win a league with Jared Goff, and that's going to be because you're stacking him with a LaPorta, you're stacking him with the Sun God, or you're bringing Jared Goff in because you stacked him, and you're throwing your hat at a rushing upside quarterback to go along with him. So over here on ESPN, where he's doing, I'm going to bring him up again. Your scoring settings and my scoring settings may be a little bit different, but you're looking at Jared Goff doing about 17 points a game. Yeah, not going to lose you a league at this point. He's going to have to take a significant step forward, like 5,000 yard passing, 40 touchdowns, for him to give you the ability to win a league at his prices. That's just the general idea behind it. And then if you're expecting that to happen, like, yeah, go buy all the toys at whatever cost it takes for you to get them, because they're all going to pay off at that point. So that's just something to be looking at. And then if I'm going after like an Anthony Richardson, 18.2 points a game, Kyler Murray, 18.3 points a game, those type of guys, the other one, Jaden Daniels, like, they're going to give me a chance to win a league in a way that Jared Goff's not. It doesn't matter how good we think the guys are. It has all to do with, like, how are they going to be significantly statistically better than somebody else from a fantasy football perspective? He can't do it, even though he's going to be able to keep everybody else on track when it comes to being able to have them return on investment. So he's going quarterback 14 on Fantasy Pros, 102 overall. On ESPN, he's going all the way down here at quarterback 21, 197. And on Underdog, remember, Underdog is a best ball league. He is going at quarterback 16 with an ADP of 122. So he's just safe. And the other thing is, like, I am expecting that the Detroit Lions are going to be good on offense in a way that I would not necessarily think the Jets are going to be good on offense, because the Jets, like, they may not be aggressive in the way that the Lions have showed themselves to be aggressive. Again, you're passing in neutral game scripts, your ability to play fast. Those may not be things that are going to go on with Aaron Rodgers and the Jets in a way that the Lions may be able to do so. So, like, when we're looking at higher volume passing offense, there's going to be more plays for a team like the Lions versus a team like the Jets. So that's why, like, Jared Goff, he's my quarterback 18. He's going 2021 on ESPN. Like, that's where he should be going, in my opinion. So other guys like Aaron Rodgers, like, yeah, he has like similar ranges of outcome as Jared Goff. But overall, like, I think Jared Goff is going to be capped. That's why I think Aaron Rodgers is overvalued at quarterback 18. I think Jared Goff down here with the guys that are going to be solid punts or less therefore than that because of the lack of rushing upside. That's where these guys should be going. Like, if these are the guys that you're pulling in your roster, like, yeah, I understand why they're just really nice picks, and we can play quarterback chicken and we can pick those guys up. The interesting one with an injury would be Hendon Hooker. He is a 3rd round draft pick last year. Probably not the football player Jared Goff is. He's going to have the nimbly bimbly if he takes over this offense with all the toys. That's something to be paying attention to down the line or in your dynasty league, something like that. Like, Jared Goff did sign that 4-year, $212 million contract. Like, outside of an injury, Hendon Hooker's not going to do anything. That means that they're not even expecting Hendon Hooker to do anything in the future, because if they thought he was going to be the answer, they wouldn't have paid Jared Goff. This is something to be paying attention to if Jared Goff goes down. All right. Well, all that being said, if we're expecting Jared Goff to have more passing yards, more passing touchdowns, they're going to go away from the running backs. If we're expecting the running backs to have breakout years, those passing numbers are going to go down, and the passing touchdowns are going to go down. So the wide receiver room, Amon-Ra St. Brown, for me, got moved down significantly all the way to wide receiver 12. On Fantasy Pros, he's going wide receiver 5, 7 overall. On ESPN, he is going at 7 overall, wide receiver 4. On Fantasy Pro, or Underdog, he is going at wide receiver 5 with an ADP of 6. I moved him down because I'm expecting the possibility that, like, Sam LaPorta and Jahmyr Gibbs and Jameson Williams have significant step forwards. And if there is a chance that those guys in their entirety take step forwards, there's only going to be so much passing yards in this offense for Jared Goff. I'm not expecting this large, significant step with passing touchdowns and passing yards going to Jared Goff. So I have to start taking away certain production from certain guys. And Amon-Ra St. Brown, his role in the offense as that, like, slot guy, that 50% in the slot, 50% outside, that goal line, red zone opportunity, in order to keep certain guys up or to move certain guys or to acknowledge the range of outcomes for certain guys like Gibbs and LaPorta and Jameson Williams, someone's got to take the possibility that they take a step back. So at 1,500 yards, are we expecting that we're going to have like an Amon-Ra, like 1,700 yard season at this point? Like, that's what we would be looking at for him to be able to return on investment. I think there's a better chance that he's going to take a statistical step backwards from what he did in 2023 than we're going to get this like CeeDee Lamb type of Tyreek Hill type of season, especially if we're expecting Sam LaPorta to be tight end 1. Now, I have Sam LaPorta down, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I don't expect that within the range of outcomes, Sam LaPorta is going to have like this unicorn type of season. That's what I'd be looking at. And I'm also not expecting Sam LaPorta to take a step back in yards. I may expect that Sam LaPorta has a chance to regress in touchdowns, but I don't think it's going to be at yards. And that's why I would move down Amon-Ra St. Brown. So probably closer to like 1,250 yards receiving and 10 touchdowns for the Sun God this year. That's why I would move him to wide receiver 12 with the expectation that, yeah, he can finish as close to wide receiver 3 again if some of the other guys don't do the thing that we're expecting them to do and take those steps forward. Now, in this offense, and I can bring this one up, Josh Reynolds, he went to the Broncos this year. So that's like that 64 targets, 608 yards receiving, and 5 touchdowns. Now, maybe Jared Goff has 500 more yards receiving or passing in this offense. Maybe he's got 10 touchdowns. It doesn't matter. Targets tend to go to running backs first, tight end second, and then apples to wide receivers. In this case, Josh Reynolds leaving, some of this is going to go to Jameson Williams. Some of this may go to Sam LaPorta. Some of this is going to go to Jahmyr Gibbs. We're going to talk about Donovan Peoples-Jones and Khalif Raymond here in a second. But in general, we're just not going to go like, oh, there's 608 yards, 5 touchdowns. Let's give it all to Jameson Williams. That's just not how fantasy function or real life football functions. let alone how it translates into fantasy. So in this case, with these guys, Jameson Williams, first full year in the league after coming back from injury and suspension, I would probably comp him close to Jaden Reed when it comes to like from a fantasy production standpoint. He's likely, when it comes to Jameson Williams, not going to be the full-time wide receiver 2 in the offense. That's probably, if I were to guess, Donovan Peoples-Jones. That's what I would guess. He's going to be the guy that takes over that role. The Lions traded for him from the Browns last year. Then they re-signed him. So when we talk about like roles in offense, Donovan Peoples-Jones, he's going to be doing the wind sprints in that X position. Probably going to be the guy that's on the field on two wide receiver sets. He was fantasy relevant in 2022 with Cleveland, 96 targets, 61 receptions, 834 or 39 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's within his range of possibilities, stepping in to be the full-time X in this offense, getting in somewhere in the range of like 70, 80% snaps. Something to be paying attention to when it comes to Josh Reynolds left, who's going to take over that slot. Well, most of the other guys on the roster are not these bigger body type of wide receivers that are going to be running wind sprints. They're smaller guys like Khalif Raymond, who I didn't even realize did almost 500 yards last year for the Lions, and he's coming back. 5'8", 180. He ain't going to be playing that big X position. Maybe LaPorta will do that. Maybe the Sun God, he did 50% of his snaps on the outside. I don't necessarily think it's going to be Jameson Williams at 6'1", 180 out there. And last year, towards the end of the season, when he was quote unquote being more of a full-time player, you're looking at like 50, 60, 70% snaps, which is where in line with what I think he'll end up being as basically the wide receiver 3 when it comes to overall snaps percentage. That's why I would comp him to Jaden Reed in this Packers offense, where he's doing somewhere between like 30% snaps and 70% snaps. And then it just becomes an issue of opportunity and efficiency within the offense. So yeah, probably over underline for Jameson Williams is going to be very similar to this like 94 targets, 64 receptions, 800 yards receiving, and like 7 or 8 touchdowns for Jameson Williams. That's what I would be looking at. That production has to come out of somebody. I imagine that it's going to be a little bit of the Sun God getting that opportunity taken away. I also imagine that some of that opportunity is going to be just from the vacated targets of Josh Reynolds leaving, going to the Broncos last year. But some of it's going to have to go to Donovan Peoples-Jones, and there's only so much of it we can say is going to leave this 500 yards that Khalif Raymond has and go to either the Sun God or to Jameson Williams, Donovan Peoples-Jones. We'll talk about Sam LaPorta and Jahmyr Gibbs here in a second. That would be the idea of why I would end up moving the Sun God down. So that just generally means for me, you do whatever you want with your roster, that the Sun God going at like 7 overall or at 6 overall or 13 or 7 overall, something in that range between ESPN and Fantasy Pros and Underdog. I think that's a little overvalued. It's probably towards the top of his ceiling because he did wide receiver 3 last year. I don't want to be drafting a guy at wide receiver 3 when he's got closer to maybe wide receiver 12 range of outcomes. That's why I have him at wide receiver 12, expecting that he could theoretically take that step forward from that wide receiver 12 type of range of outcomes and finish as like wide receiver 3. He could also be the guy that ends up being like that Jarvis Landry type of like opportunity hog that's very inefficient, talking about like efficiency, where he's closer to like 1,000 yards and like 100 catches because Sam LaPorta blows up, Jahmyr Gibbs blows up, and Jameson Williams blows up. That's something that I would look at when I look at these guys. So 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns. When we look at what that would do last year, you're looking at like Jamar Chase, like 16 points a game. You're pushing down towards like this high end wide receiver 2, low end wide receiver 1. That's why I would put him out where he's at. Probably in my mind, closer to a second round draft pick than he would be a first round draft pick at this rate overall. And if you're wondering from a ranking standpoint, why I would have him all the way down here, pulling up my rankings real quick so I could talk about this. There are guys like CeeDee Lamb, Garrett Wilson, obviously, Puka, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams. Those guys that I expect to have potentially better years than Amon-Ra at this point. They have a speed component that Amon-Ra is not going to have, a 4.6 40. Some of the other guys, Ladd McConkey, Marvin Harrison, Drake London, I think are just in better overall situations. There's a little less competition for opportunity. Talk about like Marvin Harrison here in a second. In that case with like Trey McBride, there's one and number 2. when it comes to the Lions, theoretically pushing Jahmyr Gibbs forward in the passing game, because that's what he's going to need to do to be able to return on that investment. And the Sam LaPorta having that significant statistical step forward, these are things that I'd be worried about overall. So, like, Lad McConkey doesn't have opportunity or competition for opportunity. Drake London is probably the number one in that offense in a way that Amon-Ra St. Brown isn't, because of the athletic limitations of the Sun God. He's really good in short areas, not very good vertically down the field. All right. So AJ Brown, obviously, I think is a superior type of athlete to the Sun God. And then you're looking at, like, after that, there's guys that I'm really not interested. Olave, Waddle, Michael Pittman, those type of guys. So this is just the end of the range of this type of tier of guys. Like, he's a wide receiver one. It just becomes an issue of, like, yeah, not going to be spending on the higher value pick, because I just don't think he has this 1,500 yard, 10 touchdown season again. All right. So I already talked about Jameson Williams overall, where I am expecting him to be theoretically in that wide receiver 3 boom bust range, because he's attached to a good offense, and that's going to be his role overall in the offense. Higher efficiency on low opportunity, and then with the athletic measurables and how good the offense is, yeah, he's going to be able to score some touchdowns. It just becomes an issue: is he going to be closer to like 600 or 700 yards in the offense, or is he going to be closer to like 1,000 to 1,200 yards in the offense? And if it ends up hitting the edge of that range of outcomes, where is that production going to come out of? And I don't think Donovan Peoples-Jones is going to be fantasy relevant, so we can move on from that overall. I do have Tyreek Hill pulled up when it comes to the Sun God and Jameson Williams, because in 2020 or 2018, when he was with the Kansas City Chiefs, you can have a legendary type of unicorn outcome for a tight end and still be able to support like a high end wide receiver one. In this case, like Tyreek Hill did wide receiver one. Over here, when we look at the tight end position, 2018, there's Travis Kelce doing 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns. This can happen at the same time. So LaPorta can do what he's going to do, and we could also get a theoretical, like, 1,500 yard, 10 touchdown season from Amon-Ra. That's not what I'm saying. That's why I have it brought up. All right, moving on to the tight end room. I'm going to come back to, I think, Jameson Williams here in a second. Sam LaPorta, he is my tight end 5. He's going tight end 1 overall on Fantasy Pros, 25 overall. I think he's overvalued, but it doesn't mean that I'm not expecting him to take a significant statistical step forward, or at least I'm baking that into his overall value. On ESPN, Sam LaPorta is going 27 overall, tight end 1. And then on Underdog, remember, it's the best ball league, he's going tight end 1 with an ADP of 29. My big problem with Sam LaPorta is you may be able to get the same statistical outcome, that production, from other guys. And we're talking like Trey McBride, Dalton Kincaid, Kyle Pitts. That would be my big issue with Sam LaPorta going overall. If he's not like this massive by himself unicorn when it comes to overall fantasy production, he's not going to be worth the price. That's the long and short of it. And then I can just depress the position and take somebody else that's going to have the same range of outcomes. Even if I say that Sam LaPorta's over underline is going to be closer to like 1,100 yards and 10 touchdowns, something along those lines. But if he has 200 more yards receiving this year, because we're expecting that step forward, even if we're going to give him like 12, 15 touchdowns, they got to either come out of someplace, or Jared Goff is basically like, going to end up being a real world MVP of the league. Something along those lines is something to be paying attention to. So with Sam LaPorta expecting 1,100 yards, that 200 yards, only so much of it, and we haven't even got to Jahmyr Gibbs, only some of this is going to be from this vacated opportunity from Josh Reynolds leaving, right? Some of this is going to be Donovan Peoples-Jones running like the X vertical shots from the outside. Jameson Williams is going to eat into this. He's going to be actually on the field for the first 4 games of the season this year. He's going to be implemented into the offense a little bit better. Like, again, like I'm expecting Sam LaPorta is going to take a step forward. I just don't think he's going to be a unicorn. That's why I'm not going to pay the prices on him overall. And then again, if you're wondering what we would expect to get out of Sam LaPorta for him to be able to return on this type of investment, you're looking at like 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns. Mark Andrews 2021. Travis Kelce, I mean, just generally Travis Kelce type of seasons, like 1,400 yards. If you're going to jump up to like the 3rd round to pull the trigger on Sam LaPorta, you're expecting that he's going to be flirting with that, and no other tight end is going to have the opportunity to do that. I think that the second part is a little bit less likely to occur. I think there's going to be other tight ends that are going to be able to put up similar to that 1,100 yards, like 10 touchdown season that Sam LaPorta. I'm going to put the over underline at. All right. So because of this with Jameson Williams, and he is my wide receiver 52, he's going 48 overall on Fantasy Pros, 113 overall. And then on Underdog, he is going wide receiver 48 with an ADP of 89.2 to be thinking about with that's a best ball league. He's going to have those boom bust weeks. He's all the way down here at 128 overall, wide receiver 56 on ESPN. So in this case with him, I think that he's probably better looked at to be somewhere in the line of 1,000 yards receiving and like 7 touchdowns. That's likely going to be his role in the offense. They're going to give him like 6, 7 opportunities a game. And some of these are going to be like designed. He's athletic enough, 4-3 guy, to take anything that he touches to the house. They're going to be a good offense. And if he starts hitting those high end ranges of outcomes, he's going to start cannibalizing your Amon-Ra St. Browns and your Sam LaPorta real quick. Or, and again, this is probably the less likely of them all, is like the third wide receiver in this group, Donovan Peoples-Jones, is just like not going to be a thing. And again, I'm expecting he's going to be closer to like 600 yards receiving in the offense, taking over in that Josh Reynolds role. Again, not going to be apples and apples, but it's going to be pretty close with Josh Reynolds leaving, and then expecting that Jameson Williams is going to do a little bit better than like 350 yards and 2 touchdowns last year. That's what I would be looking at with all of this. I do like Jameson Williams. I may end up moving him up further from wide receiver 52 into that wide receiver 40 type of range. Not going to probably have the ability to win leagues like that, but because he's attached to a good offense with the profile that he has, he's going to win weeks. And it just becomes an issue of how you're rolling him out there. There are going to be guys I like better that are going to be in the range that he will be going at. So on ESPN, I talk about this, like Brian Thomas, Ladd McConkey, Kean Coleman probably have the ability to win leagues. I want more of those guys on my roster than your Jameson Williams. But, and again, like when we talk about the best ball league, like if you're rolling Jameson Williams in that flex spot, if you're rolling him in like certain wide receiver 2 builds, yeah, he's going to return on investment. Just because he's attached to the offense overall, and he's going at like 128 or 113 in that range, if you're getting him. All right. The last thing, and this is why I did the running backs last today, is Jahmyr Gibbs. I moved him all the way up to my running back 7. He's going running back 5 on Fantasy Pros, 13 overall. On Underdog, he is going running back 4 with an ADP of 12. And then on ESPN, running back 7, ADP of 15. I like that. I like that a lot. Initially, I thought there was going to be a very good chance this is going to be a running back by committee. And the more I thought about it and started breaking this down, like the main thing, and I didn't even see this until I started going live, that hoping to run more routes out of the slot, like that's like fantasy, like nonsense. The biggest thing I'd be looking at with Jahmyr Gibbs is if he's getting 71 targets and there's vacated opportunities from Josh Reynolds leaving. Those vacated opportunities would push him into like 90 theoretical target range. And to pull up running backs last year, remember Brees led everybody when it came to targets at 95. So we could get a little bit more blood out of the stone when it comes to Jahmyr Gibbs. They can be more efficient opportunities. So like 90 targets, 500 receiving yards. That's the floor that we need to start talking about having like an elite type of season from Jahmyr Gibbs. If he's getting the red zone opportunity, and that's also something that we saw was going on with Jahmyr Gibbs last year at the end of the season. It wasn't David Montgomery coming in the goal line. It was Jahmyr Gibbs. If that continues, yeah, we're looking at like Alvin Kamara type of ranges of outcomes where he's doing like running back 4 in 2018. To get legendary type season from running backs like Christian McCaffrey did, he's probably not going to hit the overall opportunity. You're looking at like closer to like 2,000 yard scrimmage yards. He's probably going to be closer to 15 overall. Like I don't necessarily think he's going to take a significant enough increase in rushing yards. I could probably push him up to like 1,200 yards. I don't think I would push him up to like 1,500 yards to go along with it. The bigger thing is good offense. If he's the guy that they're going to give those efficient opportunities to in the red zone, they're flirting between like 15, 20 touchdowns. That's going to win you a league at that point at the cost that he's going at. So like that was what was really surprising me when I was breaking that down overall. That also means I'm expecting David Montgomery to get phased out of the offense. And remember, if Jahmyr Gibbs has an increase in touchdowns, either the Lions have to be better overall from their overall like offense, the 5th overall best offense. Overall, they're going to become like the elite, the benchmark of offenses overall, or he's going to be cannibalizing those opportunities as somebody else. So from a rushing touchdown perspective, David Montgomery's 13, likely to go down if we're expecting Jahmyr Gibbs to take a step forward. If we're expecting Jahmyr Gibbs to take a step forward, this rushing work, this 200 yards has to come out of somebody else. That's likely to come out of Josh Reynolds leaving, because vacated opportunities do tend to go to running back. So I can see some of that going there, not all of it. We can give some to Donovan Peoples-Jones on the outside, obviously. But again, trying to figure out like where all the opportunity is going to go forward. We can only do so much of that before a guy like Sam LaPorta's, significant step forward in the passing yards just can't materialize. Like the numbers are just not there. So it's got to come from somebody or somebody else. That's why I said like my guess is going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown overall when I look at all this stuff. So Jahmyr Gibbs, I like the price that he's going at because it doesn't have his ceiling baked into it, which is probably like running back 3 or 4 at this point. So if he's going outside of running back 4, you're looking at like a second round draft pick for Jahmyr Gibbs. That's a smash with the range of outcomes. He still has ceiling baked into him. He has the ability to win a league, being at that like 20 point a game range. So that's what Alvin Kamara was doing in 2018. Probably not going to have this like ridiculous 2020 season. Part of this, he had like 6 rushing touchdowns in one game in 2020. So that's probably not there for Jahmyr Gibbs. But again, elite, sub-elite type of tier for Jahmyr Gibbs. Yeah, like that's there. And that surprised me a little bit when I started breaking it down because of the receiving work. That's why I have Rachaad White as high as I do. And I could definitely see moving Jahmyr Gibbs up further in the offseason. I'm just going to bring this up real quick. He is running back 7. The guys that I have above him right now are going to be Jonathan Taylor and Isaiah Pacheco. So to move Gibbs ahead of those guys, those are just pure bell cows, as opposed to Gibbs. And if I want to move Gibbs up any higher, that means that like David Montgomery is a pure backup, and I don't know if he's necessarily going to go away in the offense. Part of the reason why I talk about this, with going back to those pesky stats, is when it came to the Lions last year. If I can find the rushing yardage, this 2,300 yards that they had last year, it's not all going to go to David Montgomery or to Jahmyr Gibbs. That's why like we could push him to like 1,200. I don't think we're going to get to like 1,500 yards for Jahmyr Gibbs. David Montgomery is going to be in that like 800 to 1,000 yards rushing range. That's not going to change anything. Those lower efficiency carries are going to go to him. It just becomes an issue of how much high value touches that he gets red zone, because he's not going to get any passing work. It's just going to be how much red zone work David Montgomery gets, because he's going to get about 200 rush attempts, and they're going to be like somewhere between like 4 and 4.5 yards per carry, 800 yards or so to David Montgomery, up to 1,000, and probably going to be flirting with like 7 to 8 rushing touchdowns. We can give the rest of those to Jahmyr Gibbs if we want to. Not going to have a lot of rushing work. So what I like with David Montgomery, and I actually put him on not my list, but the hey, if my draft breaks out a certain way. So I have David Montgomery at running back 18. I did split them. And then running back 19 on Fantasy Pros, 60 overall. And then ESPN, he's going all the way down here at 74 overall, running back 24. On Fantasy Pros, he is going at running back 19, 74 overall. That's what he should be going at. I don't like running back, or I don't like 60 overall. I like running back, or I like 74 in that range to return. What makes David Montgomery very, very interesting, all this, is not just that he's a priority handcuff, and it's also not that he is that he's a priority handcuff. That's the long short of it. He's going to have some standalone value. Your zero running back, hero running back, replacement level guy, he's going to have that standalone value. The biggest thing is at the value that he's going at, like if he's going about like pick 70, is you're looking at a guy who can win leagues. Like he can jump up and be like 17 points a game, 20 points a game on his own if Jahmyr Gibbs goes down. So that's what I'd be looking at with all this. So I think that's about all I got, and I don't know if I want to talk about anything else.